week's episode featuring range of motion and injury.
This week we take an inside look into women's Husky hockey.
We're joined here today with star player Jessica York, and we're just going to see how range of motion affects her in her playing. What happened?
My range of motion! Hi Jessica, tell me about your injury.
Well, Ashton, to my understanding, I believe I've hurt my range of motion.
And what does that mean?
Well, let me ask my trainer, Mercedes.
Range of motion is a measure of the movement around a joint. You can either have active range of motion, which uses contractile tissues, or passive range of motion that uses an external force to move your joint.
Wow! So I've heard that functional range of motion can be assessed through joint angle. Is this true, Mercedes?
Yes, it is actually. So, normal joint range of motion in your shoulders, for example, is between 150 and 180 degrees. There are two extremes in joint range of motion. There's hypermobility and hypomobility.
Hypermobility is a decrease in normal movement of a joint or body part.
Our athlete Jess has hypomobility in her glenohumeral joint. This means that actively she can only bring her shoulder up to 90 degrees of abduction. Passively, she can make it to about 100 degrees, but that's it. She physically can't go any further. Do you know why this is?
Well, hypermobility can be caused from swelling, scar tissue, tight tendons or ligaments, and most importantly in athletes from repetitive joint movement dysfunction.
So we've been talking a lot about hypomobility. Is hypermobility just too much movement in a joint?
Exactly! Coach Maya here just has a few questions because she found out that she has a hypermobile athlete.
So I was just wondering, what is hypermobility?
So joint hypermobility is when a joint has a range of motion that exceeds normal limits, but it's not a medical problem yet. However, it is a prerequisite for joint hypermobility syndrome, which is a medical problem, and that's when your joints have more laxity than they should, and it causes pain after sport.
So can my hypermobile athlete play this weekend then?
Okay, so with joint hypermobility syndrome, it will decrease the proprioceptive abilities of the joint, leading to increased injury. But as long as there is no pain in the hypermobile joint, your athlete can play. Just be aware that they will be a little bit more apprehensive and have more anxiety towards injury than your non-hypermobile athletes.
Awesome, thanks!
A hypermobile elbow joint.
Wow. So Maya, can you tell me how these injured athletes get back into recovery?
Yeah, Ashton, I can. So when there is significant loss of range of motion, referral is necessary. Because the goal of rehab is to develop an active pain-free range of motion, this will occur as soon as the joint has been stabilized or immobilization has been discontinued. It will then be followed by developing a strength program and proprioception, and eventually getting back into sport-specific activities. Because of the changes in range of motion and likelihood that re-injury could occur, it is essential that they have an exercise program that the athletes engage in if they are planning on continuing in competitive and sustained play. This is to maintain their range of motion.
So Maya, can you tell me what happens if the athletes don't follow these rehab programs?
Well, since the goal of rehab is to regain active pain-free range of motion, if you don't have this, you end up like Jessica and don't get to play this weekend.
Wow. So Maya, now that we have you all calmed down, can you further explain what happens if these athletes don't do their rehab properly?
Yeah, so if they do not fulfill their recovery demands of trying to regain an active pain-free range of motion, it results in excessive, prolonged, intense exercise, which may not necessarily lead to overtraining, but will definitely lead to progressive fatigue and underperformance. Since Jessica did not have an active pain-free range of motion, it has now led to abnormal loading and possibly bad biomechanics. This can eventually lead to an altered stress strain, which is now becoming a larger issue.
How do we prevent all this from happening? Prehab. I just sat in with Jessica York as she got her prehab program from her physiotherapist. Range of motion can be positively impacted by a stabilization and stretching program. Implemented just 2 days a week and over an extended period of time, it could substantially decrease the risk of injury from range of motion. Now, it is important in prehab to include both stretching and muscular building because we still want you to be able to produce maximal force. Ideally, this program can be implemented to you and others like you to prevent further injury from range of motion issues.
Wow. Thanks for watching.
I hope you learned a little bit about range of motion.
Remember, even the best can suffer injuries.
Catch you next week.
Ah, not again!